Hello, ladies and gentlemen. LEC is finally upon us. Rock and roll, best of threes are finally starting. I wanted to address where I'm at currently with the LEC. I've been a part of LEC for as long as I remember, right? I'm one of the coaches that has competed the longest, has the most amount of games on stage. I was the first split ever in Dragonborns competing. I have been on the analyst desk. I have represented Europe for a very, very long time, and LEC is a part of who I am, and I have, a very strong bond to, of course, what the league is. At this point in time, I've shown many moments of disappointment of where I'm at in regards to the coverage of it. Just to loop everybody in, a very big thing that was disappointing to me was that I was working together with one of the LEC teams to be their co-streamer. We had a lot of really cool plans to create content around the team and to create watch parties and so forth, but Riot flat out refused to have me because the argument was that I don't bring any unique viewership, which okay, it is what it is, but it is something that stings. Usually when it comes to content creation, you want to be able to have the delusion that you can compete with anyone. It's not only content creation, it's like I want to work in a capacity that eventually I become and can become the best in whatever I do. And it has been painful to cover the LEC with how the format is, knowing the decisions that were done in regards to how many people were fired, the limited resources that the casters have, and in general the decision making around it. In terms of what the format is, it was also something that I spoke up against through the channels that I could, but in the end it was of course a team decision because the format in itself is solving a problem that is a ridiculous problem to have in the first place. People celebrated the format because you have best of threes, you have best of fives, but the biggest celebration was that wow, our two teams that we really don't like seeing playing are not going to make it through. And inherently, I think that we're all kind of sick and tired of the BO1s and the repetitiveness of it all, and this element of unimportantness that is a part of course, the format. I'm hoping that if 10 teams remain, in an ideal world, there would be 8 teams because it lends to flexibility surrounding the LEC. But in a world where 10 teams are still there, maybe they create a best of 3 kind of Swiss format of some sort where best of 3 start earlier, because inherently I think that they are more exciting and they make the matchups more meaningful, but more on that some other time. So I will continue to cover the LEC. I think it's like I know I've said many times that I'm stopping and so forth, moving on, but now I am committed. I already watched the BO1s. Now the best of 3s are starting, so why should I stop when it's about to get better, hopefully. Nevertheless, you came for something else. I just wanted to loop everybody in. Let's talk about the teams and the matchups. First and foremost, SK versus Team Heretics. So SK Gaming as a team, it's very evident that Rahel and Luan was a fantastic signing for them. I think the main issue SK have, because I want to look at them through the lens of a World Championship qualification, I do think that a top 4 is very feasible right now in regards to where the rest of the league is. And I think on a good day they can definitely also beat Fnatic because of how, of course, inconsistent Fnatic is. But SK Gaming as a team, I think the main thing that they are lacking is in terms of how they convert their mid to late game. I think a lot of similarities to what SK have been in the past, even with Exakick and DOS, remain. I think the key difference is that in a lot of cases, Rahel is just fed enough and strong enough for them to win fights that they take. But in terms of precision of their macro, in terms of farm distribution on side, in terms of fight selection, in terms of how their solo lane is collapsed, in terms of how they manage their economy, and in terms of how jungle support actually take care of space, this is where they actually give up a lot. There has been, even though they're 8-1 and they finished a split first place, a lot of those games, there was a lot of mistakes in the in-between. And now as the teams are going to become sharper and teams are going to actually cater themselves towards the one opponent that they have, this is something that can be challenged. I think in terms of Niski playing carries that, bleed into, of course, side lane and farm well. This is where I see him as a potential weakness in terms of converting Tristana games, converting Corki games. This is where the meta's at right now, and this is something they need to consider. Niski, when he was playing the Hui, the Talia, even the Aldi, was looking super, super sharp. I think Niski is a very underrated player, and I think that in terms of, playmaking in the fights and in terms of making sure he has map impact, I think he's very sharp. But in terms of farm distribution, farming side, this is something that I think SK as a whole have as a weakness. And this is, bleeds into the identity of mid game. I think this was an issue that past SK Alteration also had. I feel like maybe from a coaching side perspective, player perspective, they need some freshness in there that kind of reframes the mind in similar fashion that G2 did when they brought in Duffman, who kind of reinvigorated how they played their macro game, setting up G2 caps to just farm more on side and actively play a game where information is king. The highest level of macro is when you see 5 players react consciously in regards to the information that is available. So, I spot the jungle on bottom side. It means that we are outnumbered on this side and we can push it forward. And then they tether themselves to that information, which opens up for mistakes and also opens up for you to steal waves, steal camp, steal vision. So you need to have players that actively pursue this. Sometimes in the past, people were very confused as to why certain champions were strong and some champions were not. I think the best example was, for example, Lee Sin. Lee Sin is something that was a champion that could push you forward very far, gain a lot of information, and never be in danger because of his nature of W. Rakan is another good example where you see the best Rakan players pushing forward, giga hard, spotting jungle, spotting support that allows everyone to steal waves, provoking the enemy to actually use some kind of tools. And it's very important how you connect these dots together in terms of how you pursue this information, because you know what kind of an impact it will have on your solo laners in terms of pushing neutral waves. Neutral waves being the waves that are in the middle of the lane. Of course, a friendly wave position is when it's on your side, and aggressive is, of course, when they're on the enemy side. And this is what Caps does so well. This is something that Team Liquid have improved on, and this is where I want to see SK improve too. The biggest danger, of course, is Isma is very inexperienced when it comes to playing in the LEC, and it shows. He's a momentum jungler, and then you have a Korean support. I think that is where, the challenge will lie. I also don't believe that SK's coaching staff will be able to address this issue in a short time span. But in terms of where SK is, the main things, we are bringing these things up because we want to look at them through the context of, they got first place and regular split. Can they actually make the run to maybe break into top 3, top 2, maybe even first place against G2? And these are the main things that they need to work very, very hard on. And this is where I hope that they show us something new against Team Heretics. So Team Heretics, obvious underdog. I think SK beating Team Heretics is almost a given. I think the Team Heretics, the main thing for me is, I'm going to repeat a lot of the things I've said in the past about Team Heretics. I think that when Jankos and Wunder are very smart players. They play a very, very high level game. I think they're always in the right place, always in the right location. I think in terms of execution and the value of gold on this team when it comes to Zviru and also Flacket, I think this is where you kind of lose me. I think that Flacket and Trimby, I think in terms of lane phase, they look quite uninteresting. And Trimby wants to be a player that connects with his mid laner, but even Zviru with leads is quite insignificant. I think if there's Team Heretics fans out there that wish for this team to become better, I'm hoping that Flacket plays more bold. He plays a little bit more risk prone, a little bit more, on the edge, looks to squeeze a little bit more, because I think that there's been moments in time where Flacket in his career has stepped up to the plate. So I think that if you want to view Team Heretics through that lens, I'm hoping that a player like Flacket is going to step up. Another thing is, in terms of Trimby's performance, I don't put him in the same bracket as Wunder and Jankos in their current performance. I think that Trimby gets caught a lot, is out of place a lot, and I think that Trimby is a player that has a very inconsistent performance in terms of periods. Like when he was on Fnatic, last year, when, for example, summer, he played super well. Now, and then he was replaced, coming back to Team Heretics. He hasn't kind of found himself again. So I'm hoping, if you look at the Team Heretics angle, I think where they have opportunity to become better, it is through that bot lane. And maybe Fnatic can become a player that actually leverages gold advantages and actually, bring some significance to the table of course, a team that have players that are capable of creating space. I have really liked Wunder playing the tanks. They had that good match against Fnatic, but this is, Fnatic. I think that, that dive on top kind of broke the game, and when Fnatic break, they break very easy, like a box of bones from a person that never drank any milk, because we all got brainwashed when we were children that we need to drink milk in order to gain calcium and to make our bones stronger. I don't know why I brought it up. Moving on. Fnatic versus GX. Fnatic. This is a team that is insanely disappointing. I think that Fnatic is at a point where this team has peaked, plain and simple. I think this team has peaked. I think that there is so deeply rooted dynamics that withhold any opportunity of improvement for this team. I think that everything needs kind of a breath of fresh air, because they can't keep replacing supports hoping that that second wind is going to pull them through. They can't keep having these extremely inconsistent performances from the two players that are supposed to be competitors for the top spot in their position, in Humanoid and Razork. I think that Oscarinin has been solid. I think Oscarinin is Oscarinin, that's fine. I think that Noah, he's still the player in my mind that just the nerves is too heavy on him. And I think in a world where a spotlight has been shined on that in such a heavy capacity, if you put yourself in that position where you know that the pressure gets to you, you can create more pressure for yourself if you don't create a ritual and a structure within your mind to maintain peace. And that is something that is difficult to build up, because in terms of players performing in the zone and what that means when someone performs in the zone is a very personal discovery. But the first thing that you need to internalize is that you need to find balance and create your system, your ritual in preparation for any game that you play, so you can easily convert your state of mind in performance into something that is tangible. And I don't know if Fnatic in the short term are capable of doing so, because if you listen to the Euphoria episode, Nightshare did say that they changed a lot of things. That's why they are 6-0, and that's why they are doing well. And then followed, of course, I think they were 5-0. And then following through on that, they have now not won a single game. They're on a 5-game lose streak. And now, in the first best of 3, maybe the pressure isn't on because it's double elimination. And then GX probably they will beat because they just have better players. And then we will have the same story, because no best of 1 wins are going to kind of remove the smoke of the past fires when it comes to this team. And I do think that this is a very talented roster. Like, I think that June could improve a couple of teams over in Korea, honestly, if he joined them. I think that Humanoid is one of the most talented players that I've ever worked with, but it comes with a lot of bullshit too. Razork, I think that the same way, I've said for the longest time now that this year and the past year that Razork has been the best performing jungler in Europe, but there are some performances that are just so low that I can't give him this moniker anymore because of those eye-gauging performances. But I say this from a place of, I believe that these players are capable of so much more. And the question is, will Fnatic figure it out in this team? These players, if not, will be able to figure it out in other teams, for sure. Because all of these players are pretty damn good. I think the main question would be for Noah, because, Noah, is now playing his first full year in LEC. He played elsewhere before, in Korea and so forth, but I wonder if he needs to kind of make the resurgence of being a small fish in a small pond on a weaker team to kind of build his confidence up rather than being in the heat that is Fnatic. We shall see. GX, their opponent, I think Fnatic is going to win this one. GX, I think the main thing for me is that I think their bot lane has been very underwhelming. I thought that in terms of how this roster was built, I thought that, okay, this is Antonio is going to play a very specific role on this team, and that's what they brought him on. They're not going to have a top laner that locks in Jace in the most important game of the season and just basically solo lose the game. I thought, okay, they're going to get a player that might be weaker, but he's going to be a role player. But, and then they're going to play in a way where Ignar, together with Juhan, knowing that they speak the same language, they have a wealth of experience on teams in terms of how they work in Korea, and maybe there's things that they can give to the team that gives them structure. But my prediction for what this could be has been very far off. I think the Antonio and Jackies have been very exciting additions to the league. I think a very big pain point for the LEC and for me personally is just there's a lot of players that don't belong in terms of their approach. They're playing to save a paycheck. They are not playing to pursue a victory. And the Antonio and Jackies are pursuing victories. In the first week, the Antonio was over-engaging on mid-waves. He adjusted that play pattern. I think that he's had fantastic games on Rumble, Poppy, other tank champions. I think that the Antonio has been a fantastic addition. I didn't expect this at all, and I want to really, really give praise to the Antonio. Jackies, when I heard his recruitment method, where the GX staff was saying, yo, we found Peach this way, and now we find Jackies this way. That was kind of a very weird way to advertise it, because I was sold on Peach at all, and GX realized very, very late that Peach was just having, a good Lee Sin game and a couple of great Maokai games, and that's about it. Like, Peach was not good. So when it was advertised to me, it's like, we found Peach this way. Now we found Jackies through the same methods. I was like, damn. But Jackies is a player that, I think in terms of his method of play, he plays with a level of confidence that inspires growth. I think that's the key thing. It's the same reason I'm hype about Kalist, right? Kalist plays in a way that is going to eventually put him in a position where he can become great, because he pursues opportunity, squeezes opportunities, and is not afraid to fall. He has a confidence, and as a player like this moves into the league, they maintain this confidence. Because for a lot of players that come out of ERL, their goal is to get to the LEC. They get to the LEC and they think everything is going to be different. And then they lose themselves in the process of getting adjusted to everything that is new. And as they lose themselves, they lose their voice. And then they lose everything they know, everything they're comfortable with. And all of a sudden they tumble and fall apart. And this is something that we've seen many, many times. Right? You can think of the examples yourself. But think of players that have had a short-term stay in the LEC. But GX, I think the key thing, I think Juan's slightly doing better. Jackie's, the Antonio, great. I think Patrick and Ignar, like Patrick, really needs to kick it into gear. Patrick has shown in the past that he's capable. But I want to see more from Patrick. I need to see more from Patrick, because the AD carry position is a very competitive one, right? And if I'm looking at GX coming into the next year in terms of making improvements, bro, I'm keeping Jackie's, the Antonio, and then everybody else is up, is in the conversation, big question mark, Maybe there's a world where this team, maybe, they pick up upset or crown shot, and then all of a sudden, this AD carry position is, a vacant one is something that you can fill with ease. GX, I still think the underdog here. Maybe they can win the second best of three. I don't expect them to make a run to get into the regionals. They are definitely below the bottom four. BDS versus Mad Lions. BDS to me is the second best team in the league. And I think that it can get to the point where BDS dethrone G2. in summer. This is a mix of two things. This is a mix of G2's current form. It's also a mix of BDS's steady improvement and growth. A very big criticism for me when it came to BDS and who their identity was that, you know, the star player Adam, you know, my former player Adam, he struggled so hard in a meta where enemies played Rumble, Jace, Cannon, ranged champions against Adam. And he kept playing God champs, a couple of K'Sante games, but his biggest strength turned into his biggest weakness, because all of a sudden it wasn't a thing that he could keep in the back of his pocket that pulled bans, suddenly became his crutch. And I think in this split, in summer split in particular, Adam has been playing meta champs mostly, right? And I think that's a huge plus. Like, he played the Yasuo game, right? That's a huge plus. I think that's a very, very good sign for BDS. And in regards to Ice's improvement, in winter, he was Ghost Light, you know, or maybe even a better Ghost, because the CS numbers were wonderful. But his Varus, Ashe, Jhin, it was very clear that BDS had a recipe for success. And the thing is, when you are a team that builds yourself in a way where you have a recipe for success, you are going to eventually reach diminishing returns of your practice, because it's very good to grind out games and have a structure to how you win them, as same as BDS when they got second place with Crowny, right? And they lost to Mad Lions, who could have maybe won that. The benefit is that you're going to beat the teams that make mistakes, but eventually you're going to reach diminishing returns because the meta won't always favor you, and eventually teams that play macro well and are going to be able to squeeze the gold out of every side wave that you leave in preparation for your objectives are going to beat you. And BDS realized this. BDS realized this. I think that Ice and Labrov have been the best performing bot lane in my mind as a duo. I think that Labrov and Rahel, to me, were my #1 MVP candidates for the regular split. I think Labrov is an absolute demon in terms of high position. I feel like Labrov is vintage Hilisan, you know? Like, he creates a lot of damn space. He is not afraid to engage and pull the trigger, and everyone on that team trusts him fully. I think that Labrov is absolutely insane, and I think that he makes the life of Nuclear and also Shio so much easier, because Labrov is always there. And he can be always there because Labrov and Ice actually lane super well. So the evolution of BDS now, what is the main thing that they are lacking? I think that when Nuke plays mages, I think in terms of he sets up Drakes and how he plays a defensive farm game, I think he does that well. I think that his control over Dick Bush and his understanding of his role when he plays mages is super solid. Very good, very high tier. The main thing for me is, once again, it's like 14-13. I want to see better Corki gameplay. I want to see better Tristana gameplay when he's playing the mages. I like him a lot when he's playing the carries in terms of gaining, you know, momentum through having better sides. You know, the main thing that better sides gives you is that you can choose your fights very easily. Choosing your fights, right? Because you manage the side, which means that you can force the enemy to defend because you have initiative. And as they defend, you can choose set up an objective first, and you can choose to take that fight or not, right? And through that initiative, you can also generate more gold. You can contest camps, maybe you can cut through into mid, and you can also set up for objectives easier because you have another pathway to do so. And this is the main thing that BDS need to work on. You know, how are we going to go through, like, if they are going to beat G2, I think that they need to find, you know, look at the VODs, make sure that Shio understands how to create information and when he needs to be on side to secure the side lane push for Nuke and Adam. And if they manage to do this, I think that BDS has, you know, great potential. I think this is a team that is getting better and better. I do think that, you know, Nuclear sometimes, you know, Nuclear and Shio, for me, they lack like the instinct to carry fights. and to carry games when the game progresses. But I think that Adam is good at that. Rahel is, Ice is insane at that too. Just Korean characters. I think that BDS is, if they manage to work on this, right? They've had 2 weeks. I think that this is a team that could potentially contest the title against a weaker version of G2. Still think that G2 has a higher peak, but G2 has been quite disappointing for what the expectations are for them. But before we get to G2, let's talk Mad Lions. Mad Lions. Mad Lions, I think the main issue is that they understood that they have mid to late game issues in terms of how they progress. You know, it's like they have the reverse issue of their side lane. It's like they know how to steal neutral waves, but they don't know how to convert that into river information and jungle information. Very often what Mad Lions do when they have good early games is that instead of converting it into important space, they keep pushing and then walk into tier 2s. And then whoever is on mid lane gets cut off, they take a fight, and then all of a sudden there's a 3v4 happening on the enemy tier 2 when your AD can't connect, and then he tries to connect and the fight is wonky. I can't even count how many times this has happened for Mad Lions when they've been in advantageous positions. They are like the premium team when it comes to throwing gold leads. Maybe Vitality is up there too. A big issue for Mad is that within that process, they also lost their biggest strength. In the process of trying to get better, they lost their biggest strength and tried for the longest time to cheat wins. Cheat wins meaning picking scaling champions in Jinx and Mages mid and just trying to create a situation where, oh, if we go even, we're going to auto win the game. But I don't think the game works like that anymore. I think there is a lot of rock, paper, scissors action in terms of how a draft can play out, and there's no real champion that stands out as, oh, this champion, if it reaches 3 items, it's auto win. I don't think this is ever true anymore, ever since they removed the likes of Gale Force, and you know, in the past it was like that with Smolder or Zeri Lulu or Zeri Yumi, right? But I don't think it's the case right now in the meta, because execution is king, right? There's a lot of Tristana players that also just run it down or run bad, even with gold. So Mad Lions, I hope that they lean into the early game, the Viego and the Alvaro and the Elioya that takes control over the early game, because they need to master the fact that Supa and Frescawi aren't good enough carries. Like, they need to create gold advantages. I have to say as well, I'm very disappointed in the progression of Mirwin. I think in the first split that he played, the 2 players I was the most hopeful after winter was Mirwin and Alvaro. And I think that these are guys that need to really step up, and Elioya too. Elioya also really needs to step up. In the 3 games that they played, they managed to pick up wins, and I think that this is a team that can perform under pressure, but they defeated Bounds. Like, they defeated they defeated Rogue twice. Like, it's not the biggest achievement, right? Yeah, but I think that BDS will annihilate them. I think that this is a horror matchup for MDK, because they're not playing against a team that is going to, you know, swing their hands loosely, like G2 for example, or Fnatic, right? I think the MDK against Fnatic, MDK against G2 are better matchups for MDK. So we continue. G2. And the main thing for me with G2 is like, I'm going to make the comparison with Team Liquid, because Team Liquid, I feel like they are making steady progressions, right? They're steadily getting better. I think that when you're playing in a minor region, you have many challenges. You have a challenge in the fact that you are improving in a less resilient environment in regards to, you know, the kickback and the fight back you're going to get from the other teams. You're also, you know, in a position where keep making it interesting for yourself in a league that inherently isn't interesting for you, right? It's very difficult. I don't envy the position G2 is going to be in at all. But we need to look at G2 through the lens of the World Championship. Right now, I'm in the state of mind that G2 in this roster have peaked. That doesn't mean that they should make changes, because I don't really see a change they can make where their peak would be higher. It will come with a lot of risk, right? But G2, it's like, in terms of what we saw at MSI, I don't see a world where they get better than that. Because that was like Caps performing out of his fucking mind, Mickey doing well, Hansama having good games against top esports. I feel like that was the peak of this G2 roster. EWC is a strange tournament in terms of, you know, what you can and cannot do, but I think that the tournaments that come with a lot more randomness and RNG and variables, I think this is where Western teams need to strike. Team Liquid were very close to beating out T1, right? It would have been very significant, right? G2, I think, coming into the World Championship, knowing that Europe won't be able to practice in Korea, bootcamp. They're going to bootcamp in Europe in preparation for Worlds and have no resistance leading up to it. I think that G2 is just doomed. I don't see a world without that practice where they're going to find a bigger peak. And this is where they need to prove and innovate themselves somehow. But I think that it starts with playing very high level games regionally. Their regular split in the 9 games that they played, they drop a game against BDS, they drop a game against, you know, SK Gaming 2. These are matches that need to be stomps. These are matches where they need to measure themselves. And I think that in most regular splits, it's been just Caps dragging G2 around while the rest of his teammates can get away with mistakes, especially Hansama, Mickey on occasion, and Yike on occasion. I think BB and Caps are the 2 players that stand out to me. This G2 roster are definitely a lot more capable and they are favored to win it all. We're just talking about it through the lens of how are they going to look, how we're going to look ahead in terms of what this team actually wants to achieve. Because right now, I feel like we are heading towards a failure in regards to what G2 set out to achieve after their defeat in 2023. And I will be, you know, very curious to see how they managed to do it, because I think Duffman came in, they revitalized their macro game, and I think that they really leveled up. I think that their MSI performance was super good, but the last month doesn't inspire confidence. They need to regain that momentum. The best thing they can do for me to have faith again is to really dominate the playoffs. Really dominate. Not dropping games, not dropping mistakes, really playing with a sense of urgency. I think that's the crucial thing, because I want them to view each day as a stepping stone in preparation for the World Championship. What I like to play, I always tell my players, is you have to play every game as if it is your last, because it is the best preparation for the game that will eventually be your last game. It's not a question of, you know, picking the best champion, just winning no matter what. No, it's about the preparation and the effort, the intensity and the intent behind your action, right? If you want to become world champion, you need to practice as if you want to be world champion. And keep in mind, I still think G2 is the flag bearer of the league. Strongest coaching staff, very strong players, everyone's bought in. I am hopeful about this project. I'm just talking about it through the lens of what G2's aspirations are, because they are greater than the LEC. Because I underline this with, I still think G2 is going to win the league. They're going to win the league, maybe in a good fashion, maybe in a bad fashion. I think the odds are they're going to win the league no matter what. And if anyone's going to upset them, probably it would be BDS right now. But I think even that will be difficult for BDS. Just that I hope to see a heavy and strong G2. KC, I think this is a horror matchup for them. I think that KC is not a team that can win 3, 4, 5 times in the same game. And I think against G2, you have to. I think that G2 can control and set the pace against KC because they are very bad at setting it. I think that KC have found a clever way of masking their problems in terms of how they contest mid-waves. I think jungle and support in terms of how they contest mid-waves and control river, I think that they do it very bad. So the best way for them to play is that Upset plays Kai'Sa, Upset plays Zeri, and if he's really feeling it, you can play Lucian Nami in that way too. But that's something we don't see as much anymore. These are the best champions in my mind, maybe Ezreal too. Just champions that can be in isolation on mid, while jungle and support just right-click Vladi. and that is the KC, KC motto, just right-click Vladi with jungle and support. Vladi is a player that has showcased to me in the past that he is capable of getting games with the likes of Tristana, and I think that if they set him up for success, maybe this is a way where they can get edge in the next matchup that they play. Against G2, I think that they have no chance. I think that G2 is going to 2-0 them. I think that KC is a team that could potentially beat GX, Team Heretic, and Mad Lions on a good day. But I think that it's important to remember how KC got here in the first place. And 2 games were complete steals. The Jinx one against Mad Lions, and then of course, not complete steal, I think against Rogue. That game was definitely, that game was definitely, winnable regardless of the Nashor, because the Nashor was indeed stolen by Closer because they just had better draft. But then there was the Vitality game too, which came off with a hook. I have to say, I do think Targamas is doing a lot better. He looks a lot more comfortable, good on the engages. I think Vladi is a player with potential. I think that Kana is probably the biggest disappointment on this team. I think that Kana has looked quite bad, honestly. I think that there's nothing that excites me about Kana when it comes to this team, and maybe with this extra amount of time, maybe he feels more comfortable in Europe. I thought that even though Kana was not doing the greatest in the LCK the last time we saw him, I did expect him to do a lot better in Europe, but that hasn't been true. There's very little that excites me about Kana right now, so he needs to prove me something else. I think other than that, I don't see a world where KC is going to ramp up that heavily macro-wise. There's still a very big rebuild year, and I think that the focus should be on making sure that Vladi builds as much experience as possible, because I think that the rebuild that KC is going to do next year surrounding Vladi and Kalist can be a very exciting one, and I think that Vladi has shown that he's capable of being a strong player. So I think the matchups are very one-sided. SK win, Fnatic win, BDS win, G2 win. Let me know what you guys think. If you made it this far into the video, leave a comment in terms of what you think about the teams. We did a bit of a breakdown on all of them. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will continue to live view the LEC. It is what it is. I'm addicted. I'm hoping that my situation and the situation for all of LEC changes in the future, because it feels bad to be giving so much of yourself and not getting even an opportunity to cover the event in the same way, because inherently it's like Riot have nothing to lose. What do they lose from? It's like not giving me co-streaming rights, not letting me work together with the team when we're both very excited to do it, is such a, but what's the real benefit? What's the real benefit? Because it even hurts the teams too, because not everyone can be Ibai, Kamito, and Kedru and Tolkien, right? Maybe I need to be co-streaming in Polish or something. Nevertheless, I hope it gets better, but I'm excited for the games either way. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye. Peace.